Good evening. Hope everybody's having a good week and staying safe. We all know it's a jungle out here. This is Jimmy from Chicago. I want to take you back to the early 1990s when I was a court buff. Whenever I had some free time from work, rather than go golfing or out fucking around with my friends, I would jump on the train, go downtown, get off in Jackson and State, and walk right into the Dirksen Federal Court building. Find out what's on the docket. And I was very fortunate to sit in and attend some of the biggest mob trials in Chicago, as well as other major federal RICO cases. You see, these trials are open to the public. Anybody can go, whether it's a state case or a federal case. And at times, sometimes the trials can be a little boring. But during the mob trials, these are never boring. These are very intense, very dramatic. You're actually in the same room, 15 feet away from guys like Joey the Clown Lombardo. You can actually hear his growling voice during breaks in the courtroom, telling stories and making wisecracks. I mean, they don't call him the clown for nothing. Or while court is in session, during court, you see outfit killer Frank Calabrese. His whole face is red. He's pounding his fists on the table, losing his cool, scaring everybody in the courtroom, yelling, swearing out loud at his brother and his son who are testifying against him. Or you'll see a guy like the Indian, Paulie Shiro. He slept the entire 3 months of the trial. Never once said a word, never once looked over at any of the other co-defendants. I'll never forget seeing Harry Alleman at 26th in California. And I was shocked at how much he's aged over the years he's been locked up. You know, Harry's been away a long time. But unfortunately, there's not too many mob trials anymore. Most of them are over. A lot of these guys have passed away. Some of them are still in jail. And in Chicago, you still got a couple pretty big gang trials that come up every now and then. I think there's the O-Block trial that's going on this month, actually. But the trial that I might go to is El Chapo's son. He's being charged along with a local street gang with a major fentanyl distribution center right here in Chicago in the Midwest. Millions of dollars operation they had going. He's being housed in the MCC. If that goes to trial, I might go to that. I'll keep you posted. But I highly recommend checking out any trials in your city or in your town if you're interested. I remember I used to wear my suit and slick back my hair back then when I went to court. And people would look at me like and wonder, am I an attorney? Am I a reporter? Am I an agent? Am I friends with the defendant? Am I friends with the family? Am I a family member? And I would just sit there with my poker face on, watching all the drama unfold in that courtroom. But let's go back to 1993. I want to talk briefly about the Good Ship Lollipop trial. This was a major RICO case against my favorite wise guy, Rocky and Feliz, World War II paratrooper. Right under him, you had his number 2 guy, Sally De Laurentiis. Next, you had Louis Tomatoes, Marino. Then you had Bobby Gabit Bellavia. And the last defendant, Bobby Salerno, Bobby the Boxer. Unfortunately for Rocky's crew, all the defendants were found guilty except one at the Good Ship Lollipop trial. And that was Bobby Salerno. The jury hung on Bobby Salerno. I'll never forget watching the news that day when Bobby Salerno was coming out of the Dirksen Federal building. He was surrounded by reporters, his son Alex, his lawyer, and he was so happy. He was in such a good mood because, you know, normally guys like this never walk out of the Dirksen Federal building after a verdict's been read. They're automatically reprimanded, taken into custody, shipped right to the MPC 2 blocks away. But Bobby was ecstatic. And he was joking around with reporters saying that he's a street fighter, an old boxer, and he could take anything they throw at him. However, 6 months later, the government tried Bobby Salerno a second time on the murder of Hal Smith. That's the trial that I went to. I'll never forget it. One of my favorite trials out of the 25 plus trials I've been to. It was a smaller trial, more intimate. And I actually got a chance to meet Bobby Salerno and make small talk with him. I'll never forget it. But Bobby, anytime you go up against the federal government a second time, you have pretty much zero chance of winning. It gives the lawyers a chance to really sharpen up their case. They do fine tuning. They cross all the T's. They dot all the I's. And more importantly, the government snitches, their witnesses become better on the stand. They're more comfortable. They feel more at ease. They sharpen up as well. So anytime there's a second trial, it's usually not good. But Bobby, being the gambler that he was, he liked his chances. He had his son, Alex, one of the best top defense attorneys in Chicago, representing him. He was so proud of the fact that his son was his attorney. And then he had on lead counsel, Terence Jeppe, a guy I know. We used to live in the same building. We used to drink at the same bar at 400 East Randolph. Terence Jeppe was back then was one of the top defense attorneys in the country. Definitely the mob go-to attorney, if you will. So Bobby pretty good with his defense team. And Bobby, just like Gus Alex, they both underestimated. Bobby Salerno didn't think any juror would believe career criminal, drug addict, gambling degenerate, flaming homosexual like B.J. Jhoda. Just like Gus Alex thought no jury in the world would be a career criminal that killed 6 people, robbed 100 bank, lied on the stand like Lenny Patrick. But these scumbags, they have so much detail because they know these mob guys so well, and the government does such a good job cooperating everything that, yes, most juries find them guilty. Me personally, 100%, there was reasonable doubt, and I would have found him not guilty or hung, definitely hung jury. Like the first trial, good chip lollipop trial, and then a hung jury because the jury did not believe the testimony from B.J. Jhoda. The government alleged that Bobby Salerno was one of the men that was in the kitchen when they brutally beat, stabbed, and killed Hal Smith. Hal Smith, the prosecution alleges, just wasn't any outfit bookie because they had hundreds of bookies. He was one of the largest bookies in the country, a very rich, successful man. He made millions of dollars for the Rocky and Feliz crew. He was already paying $3,000 for years, never once missed a payment. However, when Joe Ferriola and Rocky and Feliz found out exactly how much money he was really making, they doubled it. They wanted $6,000. Hal Smith was livid. He refused to pay. He was warned. He was threatened. Fast forward, as most of us know, he got into a heated argument, basically a screaming match with freshly made new guy, Sally D, who just got made, Sally D, the Rentis. They got into it, and Hal Smith made the fatal mistake of threatening Sally D. Sally D told him, "My friend, you are now trunk music." And sure enough, shortly after that, the FBI agent testified in court when they popped the trunk of Hal Smith's car. His body was beaten beyond recognition and brutally stabbed up and strangled. The agent testified that Hal Smith was tortured before he was killed. But if Hal Smith wouldn't have been so greedy and so naive and ignorant, he trusted his friend B.J. Jhoda, who lured him, who set him up, and he refused to pay $6,000 when he was making millions of dollars running an illegal gambling empire. Now, Rocky's crew reported to and was very close with Joe Ferriola, boss of the Chicago outfit, one of the most powerful men in the country, right under Tony Accardo. Unfortunately, though, for Joe, he had some serious health issues. And shortly, he passed away, a life cut too short. And I always felt sorry for his son, my friend, Nicky, because Nicky was so young when his dad died. City of Chicago lost a great man, and the outfit lost a great leader. But I love this photo here because it reminds me of my dad. My dad was a Marine, Scotch Irishman, and there were times where he had a few too many, and the cops, they needed 2-3 cops to control my dad. So I just want to show this photo. Joe Ferriola was not a defendant at the Good Ship Lollipop trial, but he was very well respected and loved by many. And according to that fucking coward, Nick Calabrese, Nicky placed him at the house in Bensonville when the Spilotro brothers were beaten and stomped to death. A lot of people don't believe that a guy like Ferriola would be there, but according to Nick Calabrese, Ferriola was there. In fact, Nick went on to say that afterwards, John Faccarata, Nick Ferriola, and Joe Nagel went to a diner to have coffee, and Ferriola told them to cut up their gloves into little pieces. And those were the words of Nick Calabrese. But Joe Ferriola was a boss of the Chicago outfit that was very short-termed. Now, the star witness at the Good Ship Lollipop trial and the main witness at Bobby Salerno's trial was none other than B.J. Jhoda. I call him Blowjob Jhoda. This guy was a career criminal, a drug addict, a degenerate gambler, pretty much never worked a day in his life, probably was a suspect in a couple murders as well. Not a nice guy, been in and out of jail, but he definitely was part of the Rocking Feliz crew. He was referred to as a lieutenant in their gambling operation. He had a lot of detail on Rocky, Sally, Louie, Bobby, pretty much everything you needed to know. Even he had information on guys outside the crew that he dealt with, guys like No Nose DeFranzo. He gave information on, but this guy's a real piece of shit. I was so disgusted by listening to him in court. At one point, I couldn't take it anymore. I literally walked out of the courtroom. But B.J. Jhoda also went on to say that they had a luxury condo at the New York building in Wrigleyville. It's a condo I used to hang out at myself, and that was an open door policy for him and Rocky and the boys. This is the place they had their illegal card games. They would plan burglaries, schemes. They would bring their mistresses there. This was kind of like their little bachelor party, but he was just showing how close he was with the guy. And it was shocking to me that these mob guys, especially some of the higher up guys, would associate or would even deal with a lowlife like this. I mean, it really comes back to get him in the end. But believe it or not, a lot of wise guys know scumbag lowlifes. A lot of wise guys, a lot of outfit guys do business with these lowlifes, and they eventually snitch on them. So, you got to be very fucking careful out there. But let's get to it. B.J. Jhoda testified that one day Rocky and Feliz asked him, "Where does Hal Smith live?" B.J. said he knew exactly when Rocky asked him that they were going to kill Hal Smith. B.J. Jhoda had numerous opportunity well in advance. He could have warned his friend Hal Smith to leave Dodge, get the hell out of town, or that they were going to kill him. Fast forward, Rocky changed his mind. Rocky asked him if he can get Hal Smith back to his house. So the plan was set into motion. This lowlife here invited his good friend Hal Smith, by the way, who was making hundreds of thousands of dollars with. He invited him to a restaurant not too far from his house. They had dinner. They had some drinks. BJ testified he wanted to get him drunk to loosen him up. BJ invited Hal Smith back to his house in Long Grove for more drinks. This idiot Hal Smith fell for it. He should have known that he was in deep water with Solly D and the guys and not to trust a scumbag like BJ, but he trusted BJ Jhoda. So Hal Smith went back, followed BJ Jhoda in his car to Jhoda's house. When they got to the house, Jhoda said he went to pretend like he was going to get the mail on the side. He told Hal Smith, go on in, walk in by the kitchen sliding glass door. It's open. Hal Smith, drunk, trusted BJ, walked towards the sliding glass door. When he opened the glass door inside the house, he was jumped by Rocky and Feliz, Louis Marino, Bobby Bellavia, and the man in black. The man in black, according to BJ Jhoda, was Bobby Salerno. BJ went on to say that Rocky told him not to come inside that house. And then later on in his testimony, he lied and said that he actually did go into the house. And when he went into the house, he said he saw Louis Marino, Bobby Bellavia, and the man in black, meaning Bobby Salerno, were standing up, and there was a dazed and confused Hal Smith laying on the floor making grunting and gurgling sounds. And BJ Jhoda said he'll never forget the sounds of Hal Smith dying right there on the kitchen floor. And Rocky told BJ, the next person that comes through that door is getting the fucking same thing. Jhoda said they all had gloves on. Now here's Rocky and Feliz. As I said earlier, World War II paratrooper. This guy fought against one of Hitler's toughest regimes. He was the leader of the crew. Rocky and Feliz lured Hal Smith. The government alleged Rocky and Feliz lured Hal Smith to BJ Jhoda's house, and that he was one of the men that brutally beat, tortured, and killed. And I think Rocky actually took a little joy because he fucking despised Hal Smith. Now, this is what I want to say about Rocky and Feliz. He knew he was doomed because the judge was a female black judge, Judge Ann Williams. He said early on he had no chance in the case. He tried to bring that up during his appeal, that he felt that she was prejudiced against Italian people, especially World War II heroes like Rocky. But according to Nick Calabrese, he testified in 2005. He was reminiscing it back in the mid 1985, 1986, that he thought out of the corner of his eye that he saw Rocky and Feliz at the house in Bensonville when the Spilotro brothers were brutally beaten and stomped to death. But then one of the defense attorneys, I think Tom Breen, said, well, that's impossible because Rocky and Feliz was under surveillance in a different location. Now, right away, that should be a red flag, a lie, reasonable doubt, hung jury not guilty, right? But that's not enough. Me personally, I believe Rocky and Feliz was there that day. Somehow, some way, he dodged the surveillance. He lost them, or the surveillance was incorrect. But I think Rocky, like the rest of the guys, wanted to fucking personally be there to get their licks, their kicks in, and wanted to personally be there for the beatdown. That's how pissed off they were at that Tony Spilotro. That's just my opinion. Now, BJ Jhoda also testified that Louis Marino was a made member of the Chicago outfit. that he was a big part of their gambling empire. He testified that he was also one of the men in the kitchen that stood over a dying Hal Smith. And shortly after, Louis Marino made a phone call looking for his cigar butt, and eyeglasses that he left behind. BJ looked for him, didn't find him. And then later on, Louis' cigar butt and glasses were found in Hal Smith's car, directly linking him to the murder of Hal Smith. Now here's Bobby Gabit Bellavia, made member of the Chicago outfit, a defendant who was found guilty in the Good Ship Lollipop trial. According to B.J. Jhoda, the government snitch, their informant, Gabit was one of the men that took part in killing bookie Hal Smith. He was convicted. He eventually got out. And I'll never forget at the Taylor Street Fest, and I was sitting down the next table over from Gabit, and I was staring at this man, and I thought he looked familiar, but I didn't really know who he was. And then slowly but surely, I saw people going up to him, hugging him, kissing him. And then I realized that's Gabit. That's Bobby Bellavia. And he looked good, but he's alive and well. Hopefully he's behaving himself. But he was, again, one of the men convicted for the murder of Hal Smith at that Good Ship Lollipop trial. Now, B.J. Jhoda referred to Bobby Salerno as a made member of the Chicago outfit, and he showed his position on a Chicago organizational crime chart that they showed, and he said that he was the man in black. He had a black hat on, like a fedora, a black jacket, black hat, black pants, black shoes, and black gloves. So he kept referring to Bobby Salerno. He remembers him as the man in black. And he also, BJ also wore a wire, and he was making small talk with Bobby Salerno and Gabit, and he was referencing the murder without actually saying Hal Smith's murder. And you could tell by Bobby Salerno and Gabit's response that they were definitely concerned and interested in what BJ was referring to, meaning Hal Smith's murder, that there could be a possible indictment coming down. But that just goes to show you what a lowlife BJ Jhoda was, that he actually wore a wire on his so-called good friends. BJ Jhoda had some tax problems. He was looking at maybe 2-3 years in jail tops, right? Nothing serious. Little gambling charge. They had him on gambling. And he also owed John Nonos DeFranzo $400,000. So it was quite obvious he was trying to get out of paying that debt or the consequences. And he obviously didn't want to go to jail. So rather than keep his mouth shut and be a man and hold on to all his money, he decided to cooperate and flip and wear a wire, and he sent pretty much those guys to long prison terms. That's what kind of guy B.J. Jhoda was. Now, Mike Large Guy Sarno, who's in custody today, who really should be released. I went to his trial a couple years ago. Mike Sarno grew up under the tutelage of Bobby Salerno. Kind of like he referred to him as his father. And during the Large Guy Sarno trial, Alex Salerno would pop into the courtroom every now and then because the Salernos are very, very close with the Sarnos. And unfortunately, Alex Salerno was busy on another case. Otherwise, he would have represented Large during his trial. Now here's Alex Salerno, Bobby Salerno's son. He became a top defense attorney in Chicago. His father was so proud of him. Alex actually represented Bobby during the Good Ship Lollipop trial and almost beat the case. When it was a hung jury, I seen Alex represent his father in the second trial. Actually got to know Alex over the years just by being a court buff. He would recognize me. I would obviously recognize him. We would make small talk. I seen him and his son at the Taylor Street Fest, and we would tell each other some funny stories about his dad. And I'll never forget when I went to Bobby Pinozzo's hearing at the 26 in California building. Alex was Bobby P's initial lawyer, and we were walking in the courtroom, and he had all these boxes, and I actually held a couple boxes helping Alex and take him to the car. And I thought to myself, holy shit, here I am carrying evidence in Bobby P's upcoming case. But that's a different story. But Bobby Salerno was so proud that his son was in court representing him. I mean, he was literally glowing. But unfortunately, Alex Salerno passed away. Talk about a life cut way too short. He passed away while Bobby Salerno was locked up in prison for the murder of Hal Smith years later. But I'm sure that broke Bobby's heart to lose his son that he loved dearly. But I'll cherish my memories and my talks that I've had with Alex. But God bless Alex Salerno. He was a top defense attorney in Chicago. Now, lead counsel, right next to Alex Salerno, you had top defense attorney in the country, Terence Jeppe. There's his son there on his left. But this guy was basically the mob attorney of Chicago. He represented all the wise guys, just way too many to name. I remember him during the Betty Lauren Maltese trial when Betty and father and son allegedly stole $12 million from the town of Cicero. He lived in my same building, 400 East Randolph, semi-luxury condo building where they had a bar. I remember he used to drink quite a bit there. Like I said earlier, these defense attorneys, they like to drink, man. They're under an immense amount of pressure. They like to, take the edge off just like everybody else. But he also represented Mike Sarno. So again, this is who Alex Salerno, co-counsel with Terence Jeppe, and a fine attorney here still practicing law. Now here's an exhibit that the prosecution brought out that Bobby Salerno's team blatantly objected to. They actually recreated a model of bookie B.J. Jhoda's house because the defense was saying it's impossible for B.J. Jhoda from where he was at the mailbox on the side of the house to see all the way through the kitchen door, through the window, and see 3-4 men surrounding Hal Smith's body on the floor. There's no way you could have seen that. That's why it was obviously he was lying or embellishing. So the judge, who's pro-prosecution, allowed something like this to be in. So that was kind of like, really at a disadvantage to Bobby, because the prosecution was able to show, from where BJ says he was checking the mail, you could see and look and see people in the house. Could you identify him by face? That's another story. But this was a model that they made a big deal. This was a big piece of evidence that the government brought in that the defense objected to. And unfortunately for Rocky and his crew at the Good Ship Lollipop trial and for Bobby Salerno, you had one of the best prosecutors ever, the GOAT, if you will, Mitch Mars. Actually met his mother, sat next to her during the family secrets trial. During that trial, as I mentioned earlier, he had a harsh voice. You could tell he was sick. He kept drinking a lot of water. I didn't know, and a lot of us didn't know, but he had throat cancer, a man that never smoked in his life. Shortly after the family secrets trial, the legendary prosecutor who put away all the Chicago outfit guys passed away from cancer. It was a major blow to everybody. But this guy was the best. He prosecuted Bobby Salerno. And even though Bobby, Alex, and Terence Jeppe put up a good fight, They did their best to really go after BJ Jhoda. They really tried to, really tear him up and discredit him. He just had so much detail, and the evidence was a bit overwhelming. And when you got a guy like Mitch Mars crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, his openings and closing arguments alone, you could basically make up your mind if the guy's innocent or not. But here's Mitch Mars, the late Mitch Mars. Now, Rocky and Feliz knew he had absolutely no chance at the Good Ship Lollipop trial with this lady as the judge, black female federal judge Ann Williams. He felt that she was 1,000% pro-prosecution. Rocky felt that she was like the fourth prosecutor by allowing certain witnesses to basically get away with shenanigans and committing perjury. And then during sentencing, Rocky raised his voice in the courtroom. He came out in shackles and the orange prison jumpsuit and reminded her that, hey, I'm a World War II paratrooper. I fought against one of Hitler's toughest armies. Can you cut me some slack? And he went on to say how BJ Jhoda and all the other witnesses are just flat out liars. And he felt that she was definitely pro-prosecution. She felt no remorse for Rocky, basically cut him off and gave him pretty much a life sentence, him and all the defendants. The other guys didn't get life. They did a long stretch in prison, and luckily some of them were able to come home. But this is Judge Ann Williams, and believe it or not, I was actually invited to one of her Christmas parties, because back then they had a lot of like older court buffs and people from the media. And sure enough, I went to the party. It was in an office at the Dirksen Federal, and I was kind of laughing at myself. Here I am around these reporters and lawyers at a judge's Christmas party. Like, what the hell am I doing here? But that's Judge Ann Williams, and don't let those looks fool you. She's a real bitch when it comes to handing down heavy sentences, and she's definitely a pro-prosecution. Most of the Chicago Alpha guys despise this. Now, unfortunately for Bobby Salerno, the jury and the judge agreed that Bobby Salerno was part of the crew that killed Hal Smith. They found BJ Jhoda credible, and Bobby Salerno was pretty much given a long prison sentence. Luckily, he didn't die in prison, but I know his son Alex passed away while Bobby was locked up. That had to be devastating for a father to lose his son while he's in prison. I don't even think the warden let Bobby go to Alex's funeral, which is should be a crime by itself. But eventually, Bobby Salerno did his time like a man, never ratted, never rolled. Legend in the boxing industry, legend in the Chicago outfit, legend in the city of Chicago. And I'll never forget the chance I spoke to him in the courtroom. Chance I spoke to him by the water cooler during a break. I was so disgusted with BJ Jhoda's testimony that I said out loud, like, I can't believe like people would even associate with a lowlife like this. And I'll never forget, Bobby turned around, he started speaking to me. I'll never forget his voice, and he basically denied knowing BJ. He said he called him a bum, and he told me that he told his son before this trial starts, if they lose, he doesn't want him to hang his head low. He wants to continue, win or lose. He wants him to continue to be a top defense attorney. He's like, my one son is a fine attorney, as you can see. My second child, she goes to law school right now. My third child, then he put his head down. He's like, she quit school in the 8th grade. He's like, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And he told me that, and I'll never forget it. We laughed about it. I wished him the best of luck. But unfortunately, Bobby Salerno was convicted. He got sentenced to pretty much almost a life sentence in prison based on BJ Jhoda's lies. And however, Bobby was released and was able to pass away in California with his family. He lived to be in his late 80s. But you ask anybody in the Grand Avenue, Taylor Street neighborhood, some of the older guys, they have nothing but wonderful things to say about the Salerno family.